Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Giri Govardhan ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girdharidhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girdharidhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Radha Radhanath Radha Radhanath Radhe Jai Radha Sham Sundra Radha Sham Sundra Radhe Jaya Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Krishna Damodar Krishna Damodar Jaya Krishna Damodar Jaya Gaura Hari, Gaura Hari, Gaura Hari, Jaya Gaura Hari. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stotra Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stotra Sata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gauri Kishore Babaji Dasa Maharaj Ki. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Babaji Dasa Maharaj Ki. Jai Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Kapal Bhatta Das Raghunath Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Dham Ki. Mathura Dham Ki. Navadvip Mai Dham Ki. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki. Ganga Mai Ki. Yamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Tulsi Devi Ki. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki. Shri Krishna Damodar Ki. Kartik Purnima Maha Mahotsava Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everybody. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva. So before I begin, I'd like to say thank you to Rukmini for inviting me to speak here today on this platform and on this very auspicious day of Kartik Purnima. So thank you again. Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. So it's my first time presenting on Srimad Bhagavatam, and I feel really honored and privileged to be here to be able to serve my Diksha Guru and Srila Prabhupada in his preaching mission. I pray that you bestow your kind mercy upon me, please. I'd like to also offer my obeisances to my Guru Maharaj and my teacher, Bhakti Chaitanya Swami Maharaj, and to my teacher Ranga Devi as well, to all the senior Vaishnavas. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'll say the verse first and then we'll repeat. Okay. Namo Namo Niruddhaya Rishikeshendriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibratyatmane. Namo Namo Niruddhaya Rishikeshendriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibriti Atmane. Namo Namo Nirudhaya Rishikeshendriyatmane. Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibriti-atmane. Namo Namo Nirudhaya Rishikeshendriyatmane. Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibriti-atmane. We'll do the word for word. Namaha, all my obeisances unto you. Namaha, obeisances again. Anirudhaya, unto Lord Aniruddha. Rishikesha, the master of the senses. Indriyatmane, the director of the senses. Namaha, all obeisances unto you. Paramahamsaya, unto the Supreme Perfect. Purnaya, unto the Supreme Complete. Nibriti-atmane, who is situated apart from this material creation. So translation, my Lord, as a supreme directing deity known as Aniruddha, you are the master of the senses and the mind. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you again and again. You are known as Ananta as well as Shankarshan because of your ability to destroy the whole creation by the blazing fire from your mouth. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Rishikeshendriyatmane. The mind is the director of the senses, and Lord Aniruddha is the director of the mind. In order to execute devotional service, one has to fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore, Lord Shiva prays to the controller of the mind, Lord Aniruddha, to be pleased to help him engage his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:34, Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. The mind has to be engaged in meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord in order to execute devotional service. It is also stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Mataha smirtir jnanam apohanam cha. From the Lord comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, if Lord Aniruddha is pleased, he can help the mind engage in the service of the Lord. It is also indicated in this verse that Lord Aniruddha is the sun god by virtue of his expansions. Since the predominating deity of the sun is an expansion of Lord Aniruddha, Lord Shiva also prays to the sun god in this verse. Lord Krishna, by his quadruple expansion, Vasudev, Shankarshan, Pradyamna, and Aniruddha, is the lord of psychic action, namely thinking, feeling, willing, and acting. Lord Shiva prays to Lord Aniruddha as a sun god, who is a controlling deity of the external material elements, which constitutes the construction of the material body. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the word Paramahamsa is also another name for the sun god. The sun god is addressed herein as Nibriti-atmane, which indicates that he always maintains the various planets by manipulating the rainfall. The sun god evaporates water from the seas and oceans and then forms the water into clouds and distributes it over land. When there is sufficient rainfall, grains are produced, and these grains maintain living entities in each and every planet. The sun god is also addressed herein as Purna, or complete, because the rays emanating from the sun have no end. For millions and millions of years since the creation of this universe, the sun god has been supplying heat and light without diminution. The word Paramahamsa is applied to persons who are completely cleansed. When there is sufficient sunshine, the mind remains clear and transparent. In other words, the sun god helps the mind of the living entity to become situated on the platform of Paramahamsa. Thus, Lord Shiva prays to Aniruddha to be kind upon him so that his mind will always be in the perfect state of cleanliness and will be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Just as fire sterilizes all unclean things, the sun god also keeps everything sterilized, especially dirty things within the mind, thus enabling one to attain elevation to the platform of spiritual understanding. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Shvapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padasahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So I'll read the verse again. Namo Namo Nirudhaya Rishikeshindriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibritiyatmane. Translation again. My Lord, as a supreme directing deity known as Aniruddha, you are the master of the senses and the mind. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you again and again. You are known as Ananta as well as Shankarshan because of your ability to destroy the whole creation by the blazing fire from your mouth. So here, Lord Shiva, he's the greatest Vaishnav, right? He's reciting these prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he offers his obeisances again and again. Now, Lord Shiva is already a pure devotee of the Lord. He's self-realized, and he's already engaged in devotional service. So he has nothing to aspire for in the material world, right? And he's also one of the 12 Mahajans, so he's the greatest authorities of the world, and he's satisfied wherever he is, just simply chanting on the holy name of the Lord, okay, wherever he is. So, however, for the benefit of the conditioned souls like us, he sets the example of how a devotee should approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Prachetas, Lord Shiva is instructing the Prachetas here. The Prachetas were ordered by their father, Prachinabharishat, to marry and beget children. So Prachinabharishat, he was a Prajapati, just like Brahma, Dakshu, and Manu. And this was in Satya Yuga at the very beginning of creation, right? And Prajapatis are meant to beget children to increase the population of the world. And now it's the turn of the Prachetas to create progeny and to bear children. So in order to enter into Grihastha ashram, one should first get the blessings of one's spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. Now the Grihastha ashram is when you are in family life and engaged in spiritual life, right? Otherwise, they are called Grihamedis. So the Grihamedis are those in materialistic life. So they're not interested in spiritual life, okay? So when the Prachetas performed austerities and penances for 10,000 years, to get the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Lord Shiva, being pleased with him, he very kindly appeared before them and became their spiritual master. Now, Lord Shiva, he doesn't ordinarily make himself available and visible to anyone. So it shows that he was obviously very pleased with the Prachetas. Okay? There has to be, they obviously were on a very elevated level for him to appear before them. Thus, he instructed them on the science of self-realization. Right? So when a householder conducts his family life according to the instructions received by the spiritual master, he is sure to beget children in the mode of goodness. And so these children are principled and religious, right? And then from there, with continuous devotion, they can come up to the point of pure goodness, which is what we are aspiring for, pure goodness, right? That's what devotional service brings us to. Otherwise, if we just remain in the mode of goodness, then we remain in the material world, because the modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance are all parts of the material world. So we are aiming for pure goodness. So here Lord Shiva is referring to the Supreme Lord as Aniruddha. In the previous verse mentioned yesterday, the Lord's different features or expansions were mentioned: Vasudeva, Aniruddha, Pradyamna, and Shankarshan. Now in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is very interesting actually, in Madhya Leela chapter 20, these expansions are explained in great deal. Okay? So it's actually so interesting, and it takes like really time to understand, and you must study. It's very nice to study. Okay? So Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has unlimited expansions. He has his pastime expansions as well as his personal expansions. So his personal expansions would be Lord Ram and Matsya, okay? Examples of that. When the Lord expands himself in innumerable forms, there's no difference in the forms. But due to different features like bodily colors and weapons, etc., the names are different as well, right? So that's the difference from Krishna himself. The Lord's first expansion is Lord Balaram. Lord Balaram, he has the same original form as Krishna, but what is different? The only thing that is different is his color and his dress, right? So he is called a pastime form of Krishna. Then Lord Balaram expands into the first Chatur Vyuha. Chatur means four, okay? And so this Chatur Vyuha is known as Vasudeva, Shankarshan, Pradyamna, and Aniruddha. From these quadruple forms, this Chatur Vyuha, the four, right, comes unlimited quadruple forms. Now these original four pastime forms of Krishna, they reside eternally in Dwarka and Mathura. So then the first Chatur Vyuha expands into 24 forms of Vishnu, which preside over the Vaikuntha planets. Chatur again means four, and Vyuha means God or arms, right? So Chatur Vyuha means the incarnations of the Lord who have four arms and guard the four directions. So here again, they resemble the Lord. They're very similar to the Lord. The only difference is the positions of the weapons in their hands. So each one of them have the weapons positioned differently. Now from Shankarshan again comes Lord Narayana. And from Narayana comes the second Chatur Vyuha. So we had the first Chatur Vyuha, and they reside eternally in Dwarka and Mathura. Okay? But now comes the second Chatur Vyuha. So again, Vasudeva, Shankarshan, Pradyamna, and Aniruddha. So Shankarshan, or Balaram Shankarshan, he is the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Then we have Vasudeva Krishna. So notice the difference, right? Vasudeva and Devaki, and Vasudeva, long A, right? Vasudeva. So that's Krishna, who is a son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Then Pradyamna. Pradyamna is a son of Vasudeva, Krishna, and Rukmini. And Aniruddha, he is a son of Pradyamna and his wife Rukmavati. So this makes Aniruddha the grandson of Krishna. And he is said to be very, very much alike to his grandfather, very similar to Krishna. So Aniruddha, being the fourth of the quadruple expansions, is described as having a complexion which is similar to the bluish hue of a blue cloud, right? So same as Krishna, right? Similar to that. From this Chatur Vyuha, there are three expansions of each and every form. The expansions of Aniruddha are Rishikesha, Padmanabha, and Damodar. So I'm concentrating on Aniruddha's 3 expansions, right? Rishikesha, Padmanabha, and Damodar. And this is exactly the same Damodar that we worship. So actually it's mentioned that this Damodar that we worship here is Krishna Damodar. Radha Damodar is not here. Radha Damodar resides eternally in Krishna Lok, okay? So he is worshipped, right? The expansions of Aniruddha again are Rishikesha, Padmanabha, and Damodar. He's worshipped by great sages and psychologists as the principle of the mind. So this is Krishna in his form as Aniruddha, where he is in control of the psychic actions or actions of the mind, such as thinking, feeling, willing, and acting. So in actuality, he's actually in control of our mental abilities. Okay? Now, Lord Shiva uses the word Rishikeshendriyatmane to describe him, for he is Rishikesha, master of the senses. The mind is the director of the senses, and the director of the mind is Lord Krishna. So himself known as Lord Aniruddha. So Lord Shiva is saying, how can I engage in your devotional service when my mind is so troubled? So the 5 senses, that is sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, are like the 5 wild horses pulling a chariot. So you can picture this, right? There's this chariot, and these 5 white horses, they're wild horses, and they're pulling the chariot. They're going in all directions. Okay? With them, so the reins represents the mind. Okay? Now the intelligence is represented by the charioteer who holds the reins. Okay? So the individual soul is represented by the passenger on the chariot. These senses are like wild horses, and they can lead us astray if not properly controlled. Okay? We know that, right? Without proper control, the senses can cause great anxiety and chaos in our minds, resulting in bewilderment. So the mind must be guided by the intelligence to keep the senses in check and direct them appropriately. Now, as we all know, mental health issues these days are so prevalent, right? So many people have poor mental health, such as stress, anxiety, depression, paranoia, schizophrenia, dementia, etc., etc. Okay? There's so many distractions and disturbances in this world. We're always anxiety over our work, our families, our finances, our homes, vehicles, security, etc. So much fear, right? So the holiday season is coming up now, and the stresses increase. We know that. Normally, this Christmas period that we have, this holiday period, there's so much of violence, right? So stress is increasing, mental stress. Usually in this time, so again, more violence also in the domestic circle, due to family responsibilities becoming so burdensome. Now in South Africa, here we have a campaign called the 16-Day of Activism. It's running from November to December. So this is a campaign against gender-based violence. So it'll tell you something, right? This is very, very rife at the moment. At the present time, it's also exam time for students, right? And we know what a stressful time it is for them, especially the matriculants who are striving so hard to get into university. Some of them experience such unmanageable stress that it sometimes sadly leads to suicide. Okay? Suicide is also prevalent amongst those who are lonely. Loneliness is a huge problem, mainly amongst the elderly, right? So which often leads to depression. Now, some years back, some friends of ours, or family friends, lost their 18-year-old son in a car accident. And the father was so devastated that he went into deep depression. His wife and daughter could not even make up for his loss. They didn't even know what was going on in his mind. And nobody knew, not even his friends, who, we had lots of friends around him all the time, but they didn't even know what was going on in his mind. Eventually, he committed suicide. Before he passed away, he was in a paralyzed state a few days prior to that, right? And I went and I prayed for him. I left a little tape recorder. This was some time back. We had these little tape recorders and some small speakers. I left it there by his bedside in the hospital. And the Maha Mantra was playing by his side. And I held his hand and I told him to think of Krishna and nothing else. And he wouldn't move generally, but when I held his hand, I felt his fingers move. So I'm hoping that he heard the Lord's name at that time, but sadly he passed away a few days after that. So we can see what happens when the mind is not controlled. In America, well, especially there, we hear of many cases of gun violence. Someone goes on a shooting rampage, right? So it's a case of sheer madness. And actually we see here in South Africa too that we have taxi violence and gang wars which are prevalent in certain townships. Then we have wars between countries, so-called leaders whose minds are uncontrolled and are busy toying with the lives of innocent citizens, right? So these poor mental health issues are so destructive. Now Krishna speaks about this to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, that all of these are due to lust, greed, envy, and hatred, which leads to extreme uncontrollable anger, right? In Bhagavad Gita 261 and 262, it is explained how lust and greed, when not satiated, results in anger. From that anger comes delusion, and from delusion comes bewilderment of memory, right? One loses one's memory and you don't know what you're doing, right? So you see when people have, we say, lost it, right? Because the intelligence is lost, okay? So this results in a destructive behavior more often than not. All around us, we see how people are not at peace because their material desires are unfulfilled. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Giri Govardhan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Right? So we see people are not at peace because their material desires are unfulfilled. And in addition to lust, greed, and hatred, the food and drink one consumes influences the workings of the mind. So foods in the mode of passion and ignorance pollutes the heart and mind. So that's why us devotees, we adhere to sattvic foods and foods that are offered to the Lord, right? So the living entities, they thinking that they are their material bodies, they want to enjoy their senses independently of Krishna. But the senses are meant to be used only for the pleasure of the Lord. Okay? So if the mind is such a powerful tool, and if not used properly, it can destroy us. But if we used it the way it's meant to be used, then in devotional service, then we can free ourselves from this bodily concept of life, right? So I'm sure we've all experienced some mental distress, right, at some point in our lives. In this heightened level of stress where something is not happening according to how we want it to, then we can't eat, we can't sleep, we can't think clearly, we can't even breathe properly. So it's like a total mental block, right? So I personally experienced some of this just 2 days ago. So I'll elaborate. I've had many opportunities. I've had the opportunities to be to MCs at functions and speak at several functions, and as well as many funerals over the 25 years of being a devotee. And I've also been giving classes for the past 2 years. So when I was invited to present the Srimad Bhagavatam class, I felt confident that I could do it. But this being my first Srimad Bhagavatam presentation, as enthusiastic as I was, I also became extremely nervous and anxious, right? So I felt this mental block. I was afraid of coming here. My heart was like pounding, and I was I was worried I won't be able to present in the presence of so many senior devotees and so many seasoned presenters. So I worried I might falter. I messaged Rukmini and said, I don't think I can do it. And I was hoping she would say, like, don't worry, someone else will cover it. But Rukmini, being the kind and compassionate Vaishnav that she is, only encouraged me and told me to trust in Guru and Krishna. She actually sent me a voice note, and her voice was so soothing to hear. And that just put me at ease. Then I also realized the essence of this verse that I'm presenting. Why would I feel like this, And I prayed to Lord Aniruddha to control my mind and senses, and here I am now, trying my best. Okay, so so in this case, I'd like to call it spiritual anxiety. Right? But anxiety on the material level is something else, right? So that's products of an uncontrolled mind, as well as the influence of the modes of ignorance and passion. So just like this, when our minds are untamed and impetuous, how can one engage in devotional service? I mean, I found it difficult to pick up my beads and chant because it was like no time, I have to prepare. Okay? So yet, devotional service is the only means of getting out of the illusory nature of the world. We'll check for time. In this very degraded age of Kali Yuga, Maya, being the Lord's inferior external energy, is so strong and powerful that she keeps dragging us down in this material world. Therefore, we need to grab onto something that's greater than her power. So something more powerful. And what is that? The Supreme Lord himself, who is the director of our minds. So we can pray to him to help control our minds and senses. Only he can relieve us of all these mental diseases. We can pray that you, my Lord, are my charioteer. You have control over the reins. Please guide me. And in Bhagavad Gita 9:34, Krishna is instructing Arjuna on how to control the mind. And he says, Man mana bhava, engage your minds in always thinking of me. Okay? Mad bhakto, become my devotee. Mad yaji mam namaskuru, offer your obeisances unto me. And mam evashyasi yuk vaivam, atmanam matparayanaha. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Okay? So it's a very nice verse. The mind has to be engaged in meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord in order to execute devotional service. And how do we do this? Through the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Man meaning the mind, and Tra, deliverance, right? So Maha Mantra means the greatest deliverance of one's mind. So like I said earlier, the mind is a powerful tool, and if utilized properly, it can benefit us greatly. I'm worried about time, but I just want to say one more thing in the topic, a personal thing on the power of the mind. So prior to my becoming a devotee, I never really cared to go to India. I had family members that were always visiting, and I was really not interested. I preferred to go to the Western countries. I mean, I've been to 2, but that was it, right? And so eventually, when I became a devotee, I wanted to go to the Holy Dham. And it was still not an easy decision to make because I was so occupied with my family life, my work as well. There was no time. So then I got hold of the book that my spiritual master produced on Govardhan, The Hill That Fulfills All Desires. And what an amazing book it is. Okay? I can't express the joy I felt at reading that book and seeing the pictures. My heart will swell up and I would automatically be transported to Vrindavan, to Govardhan. So, and I would also listen to Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan, right? And feel really blissful. So for a long time, when I would chant my rounds, I would clasp this book close to me and chant. And with this intense desire to go to Govardhan and Vrindavan, I would chant like that. So let me tell you, not very long after, the Lord fulfilled my desire. And this just shows how kind and merciful Lord Krishna is to his devotees, okay? So we should be thinking of Krishna, cultivating the knowledge of Krishna continuously in devotional love and bhakti yoga. And we must engage in these 9 processes of devotional service, beginning with Shravanam and Kirtanam. And once we continuously do that, the rest of the processes will automatically follow. And in this way, we can pray to Lord Aniruddha just as Lord Shiva is praying, for he can direct the mind and senses, right? So Lord Shiva is saying, pray to Krishna in his form as Aniruddha. He's not saying pray to him or to the demigods. Why? Because he's acknowledging that Krishna is a supreme personality of Godhead, and there is no need to worship anyone else. Lord Shiva is actually known as Rudra. So this is Rudra Gita that we are now speaking, right? Lord Shiva is known as Rudra, meaning anger, because he was born of the anger of Lord Brahma. Right? In Canto 3, it's described that Lord Brahma first created the 4 Kumaras, from whom he wanted progeny. So it was Lord Brahma's duty now to progenate and populate the world. So when he created his 4 sons, he wanted them to populate the world, but they were not interested. They wanted to remain 5-year-old celibate boys, and because they didn't want to get entangled in the material world. So this angered Brahma so greatly that from between his eyebrows, Rudra was born. Right? This is Rudra. Rudra's anger personified, and the offspring that he produced were also filled with anger and became very destructive. They became so dangerous to the universe that even Brahma, the father of the living entities, became afraid of them. So Lord Brahma then advised Rudra to perform austerities and penances and to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So basically, to take up devotional service. And in this way, his anger could be subdued, and it had. So who else but Lord Shiva would know how to control one's anger? Now, psychologists may help people with anger management, but can they really help? Maybe temporarily. It's not a long-term solution. The psychologists themselves are under the influence of the modes of material nature, so their knowledge is limited. People take up yoga to control the mind and senses, but Ashtanga yoga is not recommended for this age, right? It's a form of physical exercise. Then we also see that, some people, the reality is that some people have a chemical imbalance in their brain. They are lacking in vitamins, they have vitamin deficiencies. So they have to take help from a medical professional. But yet again, that is not a permanent cure, because their whole lives they may be taking medication, and it's just going to help them for that little time, and then again it'll come back. So together with medical help, one must engage in devotional service, right? But remembering the Lord's name is sometimes so difficult, so how will we remember him at the most crucial time of death if we can't remember him now? Okay? And that is what we are preparing for as Vaishnavas. So we are preparing ourselves to remember the Lord at the time of death. It sounds morbid, but that is a perfection of our lives. So the influence of the three modes of material nature may be so great, but still we shouldn't despair, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mataha smirtir jnanam apohanam cha. I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So at the time of death, if we are continuously engaged in devotional service, at the time of death, even if we are in such a state that we can't remember the Lord forces himself into your mind. Okay? So I think we're very limited with time, and I'll just... Okay. All right. So Lord Shiva is also praying to the sun god Aniruddha. Right? Aniruddha is the expansion of Krishna, is Krishna's grandson, and is no different to him. And the predominating deity of the sun is an expansion of Lord Aniruddha, which means an expansion of Krishna. And according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the word Paramahamsa is also another name for the sun god. Right? So Lord Shiva addresses the sun god as Purnaya Nibrityatmane, which indicates that he always maintains the various planets by controlling the rainfall and supplying an endless supply of sun rays and heat and light, which is essential for our growth, right? It's essential for our sustenance. And so although the Lord is supplying all these material ingredients for the material creation, he is Nibrityatmane. He is situated apart from the material creation, because he is transcendental to the material creation. The Lord, Supreme Lord, is always situated in his eternal abode, but he is present here in the material world through his energies, right? He is not personally present. Therefore, he is never contaminated by the modes of material nature. He is transcendental to the modes of material nature. So in his form as Aniruddha, a sun god, he provides necessary sunlight and rainfall, right? Lord Shiva also says you are known as Ananta as well as Shankarshan because of your ability to destroy the whole creation by the blazing fire from your mouth. So he's referring to Lord Aniruddha as Ananta and Shankarshan because Shankarshan as Balaram, who is the first expansion of Krishna, and from him comes Aniruddha. So ultimately they're all forms of Krishna, but their potencies lessen, as you have an expansion of an expansion. So the blazing fire from his mouth that he's talking about can destroy all dirty things. Our minds are so contaminated, and it is hard to focus on the holy names. But just as fire sterilizes all unclean things, the sun god also keeps everything sterilized, especially dirty things within the mind. And the Paramahamsa is an exalted devotee, just like Srila Prabhupada and all the spiritual masters that have come before him. They are Paramahamsas, they are perfect persons, right? Narad Muni describes in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 13, entitled The Behavior of a Perfect Person, that a person who has attained the Paramahamsa stage knows very well the distinction between matter and spirit. He is not at all interested in gratifying the material senses, for he is always deriving pleasure from devotional service to the Lord. So that's comforting for us to know, because we too can attain that stage with devotional service, right? Then, when there is sufficient sunshine, the mind remains clear and transparent. So we know how in the early morning, in the early hours of the morning, it's so auspicious because of the intensity of the sun, which is why we have our pujas in the morning. And the morning is so conducive to japa meditation, right? During this time, we can focus nicely without disturbances. You can see devotees in the morning, how peaceful they are when they're in the temple room, right, after Mangal Aarti. So your mind is not polluted at that time by unwanted thoughts and thoughts about family and work, etc. Right? Then the sun god helps the mind of the living entity to eventually become situated on this platform of Paramahamsa, the highest platform. So just imagine like the whole universe is receiving the sunlight. Okay, there are some countries that don't receive the sun for certain months in the year and for many days perhaps, but they do get it the rest of the year. And not everyone is taking advantage of this. So, and you would notice that there are mention of people in the cold countries that suffer a lot from depression, right? And that shows you how essential the sun is for our personal growth, right? So we too can pray to the Lord like this: purify my mind and senses, control my mind, and thus protect me, my Lord. Protect me from my very own mind. And how important is that? Because we know how, our minds can be our very own worst enemy, right? So my Guru Maharaj always says that the mind has a mind of its own. Okay? And so we can pray to Lord Aniruddha like that. And I think close it up there. The prachetas, right? They have a duty to perform, to create progeny. It's a material duty. But just as Krishna instructed Arjuna on the battlefield to do his duty, his Swadharma, right? As a Kshatriya, as a warrior. So, but to do it as a service unto him. Then similarly, Lord Shiva, as their spiritual master, is instructing the prachetas on how to perform their material duties as an offering unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then that duty becomes freed of any contamination and becomes a spiritual offering. Okay? So like this, Lord Shiva, as their spiritual master, instructed the prachetas to always engage in devotional service of the Supreme Lord and perfect their lives. And we too can follow his instructions and the instructions of our spiritual masters in the line of disciplic succession in order to perfect our lives and come to the level of pure bhakti. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you. Any comments or questions on this? Anyone?
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for a wonderful class. Just the point that it's interesting that without the medical side of it, that when there's no sunlight, we lack in vitamin D, and a lack of vitamin D brings the side effects of depression. And it's interesting that science discovers this, and it's already in the Bhagavatam. That the sun is so linked to our minds.
Amazing.
And even though we may not be able to physically point it, the principle is there. So I thought how valuable these ideas are, that if we apply them, that our lives, even materially, and just on a physiological level, benefit.
Yes, absolutely. So devotional service is the answer to everything, right? Okay. Thank you. Prabhu wants to ask something?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I don't ever comment or question, but you can see it as a question. You sound like a psychologist. Are you?
No. Strange that you said that. My daughter, she's a psychology major, right? And she always tells me, Mom, you should be doing my job. And I said, well, actually, all the devotees can become psychologists because we have the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And if you use that philosophy, there's no need to go to other psychologists because everything is here in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, right? But yeah, it's wonderful to be able to help people. And I have helped a few people, actually, who's been struggling with their personal lives. So if you use Bhagavad Gita, it's a basis, it's for good advice. Okay? And it's helped them. Thank you for that. Okay? Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.